Hi everyone, and I am joined by someone today you're really going to enjoy having our discussion today, because actually I followed Anoara for many years on Twitter, and I was always wanted to do a podcast. I reached out a couple of weeks ago and said, "Oh, come and do a podcast about your new book," because I loved the last book. I did a nice review of that one. I'd read that many times, and the new book is out, and actually probably more. And here is the book. Is probably more aimed at sort of what school leaders can do. And there's a lot of information in here about how you can improve the disadvantage gap and how you can improve it for school leadership for make a whole difference across the school. So Anoara is an author. She's now a Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 individual teacher, an education consultant, a framework designer, which I'm going to really find out more about. But she really specializes in metacognition, self-regulation, and school improvement. And her focus is on something that I think gets underexplored in leadership conversations. And that's why I invited Anoara to come and talk about it. And it's not just what schools are doing, it's how the school leaders think and what they do. So, written 2 books, Metacognition Primary Teaching, which is fantastic. I recommend anyone to read it. But our most recent one is Metacognitive Teaching. And my journey on this is, I would say 30 years ago, I used to be really fascinated by this because I knew a famous education scientist called Robert Fisher, and he wrote loads of books at the time. And one of his books was about this. And it was really fascinating that we haven't really done it enough justice over the last couple of years. So, Anoara, welcome to Head Teacher Chat.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And just tell me a little bit about your journey in teaching and things, because when we first spoke or chatted on Twitter all those years ago, you're a primary school teacher, probably, I think, year 1. Tell us how you got to be where you are now.
So it's been an absolutely incredible journey, Jonathan. So I started my teaching career, it was in year 3. And then after 2 years, I went on maternity leave. I went into year 1, and then I was suddenly moved to year 6. So that was quite a jump.
Yeah.
And I think at the time, I appreciated the challenge. I was given quite a challenging cohort. And one of the first questions that I asked myself was, how am I going to get this class to where they needed to be?
Yeah.
So I started actually going into year 6, made me reflect on my own learning journey. And I remembered learning about the growth mindset, neuroplasticity when I was an undergraduate. And then that brought back memories of learning about metacognition during the PGCE.
Yeah.
Although that was something that we learnt about, we wrote essays on, it was still at the back of my mind, because I think when you first start teaching, it's not the first thing that you think of. You know, you're focused on behavior management, teaching the knowledge, they become your priorities. And I guess metacognition is in the background, but you don't think about it explicitly enough at that stage in your career. As adults, we are metacognitive, but how explicit are we with it? So this is something that I started researching as I headed into year 6. And that's when I joined Twitter, I started networking, I started reading articles on it. And then after that, I did become an assistant head teacher. So I moved on to, sorry?
I thought you did.
Yeah, so I was assistant head teacher, and I continued my networking journey, reading, finding out not only about metacognition, but I joined Women Ed as well. I was a regional leader for Women Ed. I went to Mozambique and built a school with ActionAid. So that was an amazing journey. And there were lots of leaders from Twitter who went along at the time. That was absolutely amazing. And then after that, I had a little bit of a break because I started in my NPQH. I did my NPQS at the same time, did both of them. And then the opportunity to write Think came up.
Yeah.
So at that time, I thought, okay, let me take a little bit of a backward step and focus on the book writing and focus on like consulting. And that's what I did for a couple of years. I did go back into assistant headship, and then again came out of it to focus on the consulting work, did lots of writing projects, delivered training sessions to schools. And then eventually the opportunity to write this book came up. And at that time, I thought, okay, so I want to write a book about disadvantaged pupils, but not only disadvantaged pupils in primary school. And I wanted to explore more about how secondary school students cope. So I went off, and that's why now I tutor Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 students in maths, English, currently doing science. I've done a little bit of art as well, here and there. And that really developed my thinking, and it enabled me to see the progression of metacognition from primary school all the way through to secondary school. And it enabled me to learn more about what those students need.
Yeah.
And one of the main things that I came across is, suddenly students get to secondary school. At primary school, they've had all that nurturing. They've been in one class. They've been taught most of their subjects by one teacher. And then all of a sudden, they go to secondary school. They've got lots and lots of different personalities to, navigate their way around, lots of different subjects. And not only that, then the subject learning becomes that slightly bit more challenging as well.
Yeah.
And how do they navigate those challenges? And what I discovered is a lot of pupils, disadvantaged or not, through no fault of the school whatsoever, they do become disengaged with that learning. They don't see themselves as being part of the school system. They don't think learning is for them. They see kind of almost no hope in the future.
Yeah.
And so I thought, right, well, how can we use... Sorry, I think I've gone off track because you asked me about my journey.
No, you're good. It's really interesting.
It's absolutely fascinating. And so I started thinking, is there a way that we can get students back on track? I guess one way is when students have reached that point where they no longer attend school, for example. It's often about having that one individual teacher who can meet their needs rather than having a lot of responsibilities, because metacognition is it's multidimensional. It's not only about that plan, monitor, evaluate cycle. There's so much more to it. And there are so many different facets, so many different levels that you can come in, lots of different lenses by which you can view metacognition. When we talk about retrieval practice, scaffolding, giving students feedback, developing their independence, everything is interrelated. And without those things, also, you can't develop metacognition. You need everything to be in place. So if I give you an example of a student that I can say has been really successful as a result of this. So when I first met these people, they had their hoodie up, they wouldn't make eye contact, they saw no hope for the future. And I'm talking about this as like a year 11, in the middle of March, they've got to sit their GCSEs. So, I started thinking, right, what am I going to do? So I think the main thing that as educators we need to do is be patient first of all, meet them halfway, diagnose what the learning gaps are, but it has to be done in like a gentle kind of way. And over time, I noticed the hoodie come down. They started making eye contact. This didn't happen overnight. It took a number of weeks of me being absolutely patient. You know, every time the student would walk in, I'd think, oh gosh, they've got the hoodie up again. But never did I once show that, you know.
Yeah.
It's more about understanding your own, like being self-aware and realizing the signals that you're giving out to students as well. You know, by my body language, what am I telling them? Am I telling them, I don't like your hoodie, take it? You can't do that. So it's more about, okay, I've got to remain calm, you know, completely calm, and just wait and be patient. So as we started working together, it only took a few weeks, not really that long, all of a sudden the students started reflecting. And I thought, oh, this is really good. And then the students started saying things like, I'm not happy with that, you know, test score that I got. I thought, oh, that's good. Then they started setting their own goals. So they would say to me, okay, I've made a list. I think I know what I need to revise. I need to revise this, this, and this. And I'd be saying, yeah, well done. That is absolutely amazing. Then they started planning their revision. So they actually, you know, filled in a timetable. I was so impressed. They started going to the library. You know, their mother said to me, Anoara, it's the first time they've gone to the library in like ages. And then they really started to push themselves. And there's a line I'm never going to forget that student said to me. She said, Anoara, now I have hope. And I was just so taken aback. You know, and I thought,
this, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely amazing. And I thought, this is the impact, this is the transformative power of metacognition and all the other things that we as teachers put into place, you know, and, you know, they've ended up with multiple college offers now.
Wow.
So that's only since March, really.
That's incredible.
So absolutely amazing. I mean, I've got so many stories that I could tell, but I'll leave it there.
The other thing, I mean, the thing about the book that I absolutely love is it's deep into the research. So in some ways, do you want to explain about the research you did for this book, especially about the EEF and all their findings, and actually how it would be useful for school leaders in some ways, and how your viewpoint had changed over the time from doing all the research?
Yes, so the EEF, they've got a fantastic toolkit on their website. They have they also have the leadership implementation guide out as well. And that talks about being reflective, being adaptive in your practice, and sort of like what I talk about flexible thinking, being totally open to change. And it all ties in together, like the research. Some of it I have used in my first book as well, but this time when I read the research, I looked at it with the lens of disadvantage. So the first time when I read it, it was about, okay, I'm learning about this, I don't really know that much about it. And this time it was like, okay, so how can we improve, you know, the lives of our disadvantaged pupils? So that's the angle that I took with the research this time. But I absolutely love the EEF, all their research, all their reports. They also have a podcast.
I know. Really good.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And they have staff coming on, schools coming on, talk about giving examples about how they've introduced metacognition amongst other things into their school settings as well.
And there's something about the 7 month, if you do metacognition you get a great improvement in 7 months.
Yes. So for disadvantaged pupils, it used to be that you get 7 months plus progress. And now I've noticed it's changed to 8 months plus progress.
Wow.
So, I mean, that could be because of all the other things that we're implementing at the same time, possibly. And all the new research that's being done about adaptive teaching, and all those sorts of things.
So if you're a head teacher and you're really trying to think about the disadvantage gap, the most crucial thing would be implementation of any plan, isn't it? Because that's basically what the EE has to come out with. Actually, if it's not implemented properly, it doesn't gain the right traction in schools. Have you got any advice for a new head teacher who would be wanting to plan to do this in school?
So I think what's really important is, and I call it the leadership gap, is we have this idea of what teaching and learning should look like, but the gap is so wide between the professional development and the impacts of it in the classroom. We need to break it down, I would say, into steps. So we need to think of it different levels. So you've got your student level of metacognition, you've got your teacher level of metacognition, you've got your professional development, your school level, your trust level. So in the book, I talk about the PCCME or PICME blueprint, which is based on Flavel 1979's work on the plan, monitor, evaluate cycle. That cycle can run through the entire school system. So not only can it be used, that's not, I haven't mentioned that in the book, but it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. So where the PICME cycle is used for students, that can be used for teachers as well. That can be used at school level, at trust level as well. But you change the questions, and that would give leaders a framework and a consistent language across the school. Because I think Teacher Toolkit has written a report about implementing change in schools. And one of the things that they picked up on was the fact that teachers are willing to find out about, the neuroscience of learning. They're happy to implement things in their own classrooms. However, the school system hasn't caught up yet, and there isn't that common framework, that common language that schools are using or trusts are using. And I think that's important. And once we have that, I think implementation would become easier. Another thing I would say is we should question ourselves. So we should think about our own assumptions, our own biases, because we're living in a world now where we're just constantly flooded with information, whether it's online, outside. Some of that information is also incomplete. So, when you're over flooded with information, what do you give your attention to? When you've got incomplete information, what your brain tends to do is make assumptions to fill in the gaps. And just this week, I was waiting for an email I hadn't heard for like weeks. So my brain started making up stories to fill the gap. And in reality, when I received the email, the story was completely different to what I had in my head. And as leaders, because of the circumstances that we're in, high-pressured environments, it is something that can naturally happen. So we need to ask ourselves questions. What are my assumptions? What is the evidence for these assumptions? Do I need to consider other people's perspectives? what would one of the other questions that I think about often is, what would somebody say who disagrees with me about this? So these questions can enable us to really reflect on, implementation, leading in a school, to really help have the biggest impact, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a conversation with Andrew Young, who's done a podcast with me about adaptive teaching. And he was saying about ECTs at the moment going into schools. And they got all the neuroscience part of their training, and part of the framework talks about the science behind it all, and really in detail. And then he talks about them going into schools, and their mentor or their leader would have completely different training when they were ECTs. So they're not talking about the same things. So you're getting these rich knowledge of these people coming in, but people who've been trained 20 or me 30 odd years ago didn't have the same training. And it's sort of like a mismatch of what their understanding is. And so it all tallies through with that, is actually how you do this, how you put it in place. The other thing I was going to talk about, you talk about school culture as well. And so that's a common theme with us, our school leadership platform, is the school culture. How do you create that school culture for metacognition?
One of the things I would say is you've got to create the conditions that you do in the classroom for teachers as well. So, for example, just thinking back to my own teaching journey, I remember we had a mock Ofsted. I was in year 6, and I put up a piece of text on display. Thankfully, it wasn't a grammar lesson because I'd made a mistake on it. So, I had a group of people come in, they did the observation, they left. And then I suddenly realized, I've made a mistake on that text. And I sat there for a while and I thought, what shall I do about it? Shall I leave it? Shall I say something? So I thought, I've got to own up. I ran into the head teacher's office and I said, I'm really sorry. I made a huge mistake on that text. And it was what she said to me that completely shifted my mindset. She said, Anoara, don't worry about it. I don't even think anyone noticed. So it was almost like she was giving me permission to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn. And, I've worked in many, many amazing schools, but that was the first school that really restarted my journey in metacognition. And I would say create a culture of mistake making, because we're all human at the end of the day. And I would say the most successful organizations that do thrive are the ones where people are not afraid to make those mistakes. And they're the ones that become the innovative, leaders at the end, because they're not frightened, they're not scared. They take those risks, they learn from each other. They don't blame each other. So it's not like, oh, right, what did that person do? That person did this. They think, what can we learn from this?
Yeah. I think that's the important thing within this caveat of making mistakes. It's actually learning from it. Don't do the same mistakes all time and time again.
Yes.
Because actually it's about the learning from it, and what have you learned from it, and how it's going to improve it in the future. And that's basically what this is all about, isn't it, really? And teachers doing that, taking more responsibility about their own learning and how they can improve, reflect on it, notice, have self-noticing, self-aware of what they're doing and how they're doing it. So I love the thing about teacher metacognition and how that is. And in some ways, what we need to develop it is also for leaders to have that metacognition as well.
That's
and
right.
Actually reflect on some of the things they do and how they're going to improve. That's brilliant. I love it all, really. So, I mean, if you were a head teacher listening to this podcast on the way into work, or if you're having a break or something like that, and you're tapped into it, what one small thing could you change in the next week that really make a big difference for your school, especially with the disadvantaged children?
What small thing? Oh, let me just have a little think about that.
It's a challenging question. It's like I asked everyone this sort of question. It's just that one little snippet.
For disadvantaged children. Okay. I would say actively listen. And the reason why I say that is because, often students come to us, and now I know there are two camps about behaviour, but I'm not going to dwell on that. Children, pupils, students come to us for help with something, whatever it is. They have their own opinions. They have agency as well, or they should have agency, and we should create the conditions for agency for all pupils. So a student might come to you and say, "Sir, Miss, I really want to do the higher paper in maths," for example.
Yeah.
Now, due to budget constraints, time constraints, staff constraints, we have a lot of them upon us. We might be thinking, no, you're going to do the foundation paper. I haven't got the resources for you to be able to do the higher paper. And often disadvantage doesn't mean that they're not capable. It means we haven't seen whether they are capable or not. We're not seeing it. So if a disadvantaged pupil was to come to you and say, I really want to sit that higher paper, ask yourself questions. Why are they asking me that? What is it that they know that I haven't discovered yet? What assumptions have I made about it? Going back to those reflective questions, and find out or diagnose the reason why they're asking you, because it could be that they actually know more than we think they know, and maybe we should give them that opportunity.
That's a really good point. And actually, is that actively listening, noticing what's going on, noticing what's happening with their thing, because you might miss something. That's a really good point and really good advice for anyone who's listening to this podcast in the car on the way home. And
sorry, can I just summarize that?
Yeah.
So I wanted to say, so being aware, actively listening, looking for evidence, and then revising our own thinking in light of the new evidence.
Sounds brilliant. Just going back to I'm going off a little bit on a tangent now. So going back to the book on this one, you got the PCCME cycle. Do you want to explain a little bit more about that cycle and how it could be useful for school leaders? Because I found it fascinating.
Yes, so that is an adaptation of Flavel's work, as I mentioned earlier. So Flavel talks about the planning, the monitoring, and the evaluating cycle. So the two extra steps are connecting and checking. Now, whether you're a primary school leader or secondary school leader or higher education leader, you can use that. I called it a blueprint framework, whatever you want to call it. You can use that. It is not linear. You can enter it at any point. So as I mentioned earlier about my student, she didn't start setting goals straight away. First of all, she was reflecting. Then she started setting goals. Then she started planning her revision. So it's not linear, but it's quite tricky to show it in a visual. So it is, I would say, multidimensional. So it's planning, connecting, checking, monitoring, evaluating. So those 5 stages, or lenses, as I call them, they can be used in leadership as well. So going back to what I was saying about reflecting, so for your planning, you could be asking yourself, what assumptions am I making? That whole thing about belief, what do I believe in? What am I not seeing? For your checking, you could be asking yourself questions along the lines of, connecting is the second one I've put on there. So connecting, have I come across something like this before? In my previous experience, what has happened? What strategies can I bring from my previous experience into this context? For your checking and monitoring, it's quite similar, those two. So what's working, what's not working, what do we need to change? That leads nicely into the evaluating part of it. So school leaders can use that, trust leaders can use that, they can rewrite their own. And actually, teachers can use it as well. So teachers can use that for lesson planning as well.
Yeah, it sounds great. And you've got a set of questions as well for school leaders to actually use, and that linked to that, isn't it, really? Those 4 questions that what assumptions, what evidence supports my current thinking, what evidence might I be overlooking? So like you're going back to that noticing, and then, oh, it's great. I mean, there's so much information in here for school leaders. Is there anything else that you think that would be useful for a school leader to find out about metacognition for their school? I think you covered most of it.
I think have I missed anything out?
I just feel like no, and if they want to find out more information, you definitely can go to the book. It's got so much information in the book, hasn't it, of everything. It goes in much more detail. And as I said at the beginning, it's so well researched into the what you need to do in schools. So is there any other bits of advice for a school leader? So like that you were once a school leader in the school, what would you like to hear then now to support you? Okay to make a mistake.
It's okay to make mistakes. Start off small, I would say, with metacognition. If you're new to implementing it in a school, start off like really small. Pick one from the PCCME cycle, not the whole thing at the same time. If you're a primary school leader, you might just want to focus on the 3: planning, monitoring, evaluating, not all 5. There are a couple extra for year 10s, synthesis and explanation and synthesis. But you don't need to implement all of them at the same time. So start small, I would say. So just to recap, it's okay to make a mistake, start small, and have a checklist just in case you forget the cake. And if you want to find out more about the cake, go to my Twitter account at Anoara_A, where you'll find out about metacognitive teaching and the missing cake.
Yeah, I see the link now. I mean, that's brilliant. Okay, so if anyone wants to find out more information about what you do, where can they find it? It's on Twitter and you're on Instagram and you've got a website as well.
Yes, which is Think Future Learn. And I'm on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, the usual.
Yeah. Okay, I'm on all those ones as well. So like Facebook as well, just those things. So I mean, as I said, I've been wanting to have this conversation for a long time because I love what you're doing and how you're doing it, how you're portraying the message of metacognition in schools. I can't even say it now. It's just so hot. I'm sort of like it's wilting in the heat here now.
I know, it's too hot.
It's terrible. And it's so important thing to do. It's sort of like it seems small, but actually it's a massive thing if you put it right in schools for them to everyone, the whole school community, to understand how they learn, what they're learning, and reflect on their learning. And even if you want to go into a deeper one, so it sounds small, it is an important step for school leaders to do. So thank you very much for your time today, and We have to come down and meet you in person or something at some point.
That'll
We
be
are in
amazing.
London all the time, so we have to meet up or something for coffee or something. And
yes, let's continue the conversation.
Yeah, and continue the conversation. Yeah, there's so much more that we could discuss in today. And yeah, so thank you for the time. I bring Kate with me, shall I?
Yes, please.
I bring.
All right.
So thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone listening. If you want to find out more about this fantastic book about how you do your thinking in schools, do go to the website. I've done a book review in the community, which we'll be sharing on all the platforms as well. And it goes in a bit deeper of what we're talking about today. And there's a link to buy it from Amazon from there as well. Yeah, so enjoy the weather. It's a bit hot where we are, or where I am. And until next time, keep thinking about your thinking. Thank you, Anoara.
Thank you very much.